Good morning. Can you hear me? Good morning. Yes? All right. My name is Michelle Daniel, and I am the proctor of this class, so I'm so thankful that you're here today. It was a little warm earlier, and we turned the air on, so hopefully it's comfortable for you all. Let us know if it's not. We'll do our best to adjust that. This is A1, Workplace Culture, what it is and why it matters. We've got Sue Misiorski, Vice President of Workforce Innovation, and Meg Jones, Vice President of Human Resource with SageLife. And we thank you so much for coming and speaking with us today and helping us to learn, and hopefully at your tables you'll have a chance to learn from each other as well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Good morning, everybody. So this is the first of several sections of the Workplace Culture track. And that track is being sponsored by an organization called PHI, which is a national not-for-profit organization located in the Bronx in New York. And they have a 25-year history of advocacy for people who live and work throughout the continuum of long-term care services. And on each of your tables, we've put a booklet that is a 10-step guide to recruitment and retention that's put out by PHI. It's a free guide. And if any of you want more of them, you can just go on PHI's website and download those. I was the Vice President of Workforce Innovations for PHI. And as I stand before you today, I'm now the Regional Director of Operations in New England for a company called SageLife. And when I was with PHI, SageLife was actually a client that I got the chance to work with off and on over the past 3 years. And it's a client that became near and dear to my heart, that I would go as far as to say that I fell in love with them. And as they're expanding their organization into New England, where I live, I contacted them and said, you know what? I'd love to be a part of that expansion. So here I am now, sort of wearing a little bit of two hats today, because when we submitted this, I was in my former role. So I'm joined today by Meg Jones, who is the Vice President of Human Resources at SageLife. And I want to tell you a little bit of about my background, and then I'm going to ask Meg to tell you a little bit about her background. So I've been with Pioneer Network since its inception. I actually was blessed and fortunate enough to be one of the founders and was the first board president of Pioneer Network going way back when. I have been to every Pioneer Network conference except for the one in Jacksonville, and I'm super excited to be here with you today. I started in long-term care as a nursing assistant when I was 16 years old, which was over 3 decades ago, and have been in long-term care ever since. My background is in nursing, and I've been involved in many, many change initiatives, and workplace culture is really where my passion lies and where a lot of my consultation work was focused on. I'm also born in Louisville. So for me, this is a coming home. I am very excited to be here, and I got the chance to spend the weekend with my family and visit with some of my favorite places, even got to go to church yesterday here, which I always really enjoy. So I'm super excited to be here and super excited to be with all of you today.
This is a microphone test. It's working, right? You can hear me? So I'm Meg Jones. I am the Vice President for Human Resources at SageLife, formerly Sage Senior Living. My career, 35 years of my career, was spent in 3 large academic health systems, academic medical centers, in 3 different geographies in the country. And through the course of my career, I spent a lot of time through acquisitions helping to extend the culture of the mothership to smaller organizations, whether they were physician practices or smaller hospitals, outpatient clinics, and had a lot of practice in defining and then spreading and embedding culture as organizations grew. At the end of 2015, I retired. And then I met Kelly Andrus, who was our founder, president, owner, and she was in a position of, one, needing to hire a human resources person. So I was the first HR person at what was then a 200 associate company, but she had growth aspirations and wanted to bring in an HR person who had experience growing organizations and spreading and embedding culture. So as my daughter, who joins me here today, said, "Oh, Mom, so you're coming out of retirement to go into retirement?" I said, "That's what I'm doing." So I joined Sage in May of 2017. Sue was one of the first people I met because of the work that she had done at Sage on culture and handed some of that off to me. So it's really an honor to be here today addressing you. I am thrilled to see how many of you are interested enough in culture to be here. So thank you. And thank you, Sue, for inviting me to join with you today.
All good, all good. So Meg, we call what you're engaged in right now your encore career. Okay. So we're going to talk about what workplace culture is. We're going to talk about how to articulate your values and how to make sure that your workplace practices and systems are actually aligned with those values so that they're genuinely alive and that they're genuinely guiding daily practice. So kind of building off our opening plenary this morning, when your workplace culture is thriving, you walk in and you feel it. And it just feels right. It feels good, it feels right, it feels warm, it feels welcoming, and you actually look forward to being there and coming into work in the morning. So I wanted to start with this cartoon. I always like cartoons, but when it comes to talking about culture change, I think those two words just cause staff to go to the groan zone immediately, right? What are we going to do? We're going to change our culture. Oh, great, right? So this cartoon kind of just captures that a little bit. So what do you think about this whole culture change process? I'm against it. Why? Because it's focused on just one thing: changing how everyone works and acts around here. I mean, what does that have to do with me? Right? Does this feel familiar? I mean, how many times when we've tried to initiate change have we heard people say, yeah, that's, you all go right ahead, I'm good. That's not the way we do things here. I tried that before and it didn't work, right? So we get all of these different kinds of reactions. And so one of the things that we're going to talk about today is really getting everyone involved and enthusiastic about participating in shaping culture and moving past that groan zone. So I want to start by having you guys pick one word. So just think to yourself quickly for a moment. If you could pick one word that describes your current workplace culture, what's the first word that comes to your mind? Anybody, call it out. What comes to your mind? First word. Tension. Somebody else. Messy. Unorganized. Selfish. Okay. Anybody got a positive word? Passionate. Loving kindness. Okay, beautiful. Pardon? Joyous. Family. Okay. So it's all over the place, right? I will tell you that in my work, no matter how well-intended an organization is, if you ask your employees that same question, more often than not, the answer is negative. More often than not, because their daily reality of working in the workplace is often one where they feel like they're running, and they're not able to make the kind of difference that they really want to be able to make in someone's life because of the overall systems and structures that are in place, okay? Now, think for a moment of the word you would like to be able to use to describe your workplace culture. What would you like that word to be that would be a genuine, actual reflection of your workplace? Fulfilling, collaborative, community, supportive, teamwork, life affirming. Amen. Okay. So again, in getting started or picking up from wherever you are in your culture building process, if you start by asking your community this question: what is the word? What do you want the word to be? And what are your ideas for getting us from here to there? Ask the residents, ask the employees, ask the families, ask everyone that's actively involved in living and working in your community, and that is the easiest and most important place to start. Okay. So what is culture? What is workplace culture? Very simply put, it's the way we do things here. It's just the way we do things here. To most people, it's invisible. It's just there, right? We walk past it every day, and it's just there. One of the things I loved about being a consultant is I was the outsider coming in with fresh eyes, so whatever was there was new to me. And it was not invisible to me. And I think that's something that we have to cultivate on an ongoing basis, is having those fresh eyes. So the workplace culture has shared values, beliefs, and customs. They're there whether you articulated them or not, right? So let's say, for example, your staffing custom is 7 to 3, 3 to 11, and 11 to 7. You may have inherited that staffing schedule because it's been in place in long-term care since time immemorial. Goes back to the 3 decades ago when I was a nurse's aide. It's a custom. It may not make a whole lot of sense, but it is what we do, okay? So there are things that are just there that maybe you inherited, or there's things that are there that you would have intentionally put into place. All of this is evident in your policies and your practices. So let's say, for example, when you're interviewing a new employee, and you say to that employee, we value teamwork. It's really important to us, and you ask that new employee questions about their experience with teamwork. But then they start, and they don't feel any teamwork at all, right? What they'll say to you is, you know, it's not what you said. It's not what you said. So we want the behaviors in the organization to match the values that are espoused. It attracts talent and drives engagement. There is no question that organizations that have a positive, thriving workplace culture, I can name organizations that actually have a waiting list of people who would like to work there. Why? Not because they have the highest pay of anywhere in the area, but because they have the best workplace culture, okay? I can also tell you that people who choose to stay, make that choice largely because of the level of engagement that they have in your workplace culture. It's visible in relationships. Are people grumpy with each other? Are they short-tempered with each other? Does your kitchen have a policy that they won't answer the telephone during meals? You know, do your nurses have a policy that they cannot be disturbed when they're doing a med pass? These are all systemic things that chip away at people's relationships within the organization. So we look at relationships and how they play out, and of course it's amplified by our actions. So finally, I just want to say that if you take anything away from today, it's to be intentional. Do not let your culture form by itself. It's there. Every workplace has a culture. But if it's happening organically, it may not be a very positive culture. In fact, it may be toxic. Instead, you want to go through an intentional process that we're going to walk you through and tell you the SAGE story about how we've really intentionally created a culture that we call the SAGE way. So you want to be intentional and go about shaping it in a way that honors the person-centered values that you all believe in. So my last slide before I turn this over to Meg is just about the connection between engagement, retention, and culture. So this is from a Gallup poll, a recent Gallup poll, and I think it's pretty interesting because basically what it says is that 53% of employees are not engaged, and for every 2 employees who are engaged, there is 1 employee who is actively disengaged. Why does that matter? Because those are the people most likely to quit. People who are disengaged, they are cognitively and emotionally, they are not connected to their workplace. They will usually show up to work, do the minimum required, but will quickly leave their company for a slightly better offer. How many of you are struggling with recruitment and retention? Okay, almost everybody, all right? So engagement becomes really, really critical. All right, I'm gonna turn this over to Meg.
Alrighty. Okay, let me get. Get out of the way of the light here. So I want to give you a little bit of background into what the company is that is SageLife. It started as Sage Senior Living back in 2003 when Kelly Andrus bought back from a company that she'd worked for, Sunrise. It was her first company out of college. She bought back one of the first communities that she had built, and that was in Towson, Maryland. And in 2003, that became the first then Sage Senior Living community. And once that was acquired, Kelly's journey was, she had a view of senior living that was different than what she saw available to her out in the industry. Sage is a private, for-profit rental, personal care, memory care, independent living. No nursing, skilled nursing level care. So that's just kind of who we are. And her other component was she was living in Philadelphia. She wanted to be able to drive to any of her communities within, half a day. So this is sort of our geographic distribution. Once she had acquired back this community, she started plans for building what is now Plush Mills in Wallingford, Pennsylvania. It's a 160 apartment, high-end, independent personal care community. And that community opened in November of 2007. So think where you were in November of 2007. We barely got that community filled before people could no longer sell their single-family homes and move into our communities. So Kelly moved her family into the community, moved a lot of other people into the community so they could rent out their houses and just have enough to keep that community afloat. Fortunately, she was able to fill Plush Mills within 2 years, which was pretty much of a feat considering the times, and started building a third community also in the Philadelphia suburbs in Pennsylvania called Dalesford Crossing, a slightly smaller community of 90 apartments, independent personal care and memory care. And at the time that that happened, and I guess I should mention that Sage started and is evolving from a family-owned, family-operated business. So Kelly started Sage with herself, her husband, her sister, and her sister's husband. And they still work for the company today, but they were really the ones that got it launched. So it was very much a family business. So up until we opened Dalesford, Kelly knew everybody by name. She knew every resident by name. She knew every employee. Then we called them employees. Then she knew every employee by name. And she really influenced how people behaved, what the feel was in the communities. Kelly came into a community with a lot of energy and energized everybody else inside of the community. But once we started opening Dalesford, all these leaves, these are all our 200 individual employees, Kelly didn't really know their names anymore. And she thought, we have a communications problem. What we have here is a failure to communicate. And so she worked hard on building communication systems, and that didn't fix the challenge that she had when she couldn't touch each resident and couldn't touch each associate. So she realized that the narrative needed to be shaped and that we needed to move from kind of the family business, the culture of Kelly, to the culture of Sage. And the way that that happened was through a series of very intentional, you heard Sue talk about culture is intentional if you do it well. A series of intentional meetings with residents, associates, employees, family members, leaders, investors. Who are we and how do we represent our culture? And that's where we came up with our We Care values. So this dates back to about 2013, 2014. As we were building Dalesford Crossing, Sage defined what it is to be a Sage community. That we work as a team, focus on delivering exceptional service always, and that's a big deal for us because, as Kelly will tell our associates, our residents, with their rent and their levels of care, essentially are buying a new Mercedes every year. They're paying top dollar to live in a Sage community. We have a value experience that we need to provide. So exceptional service was very much the focus. Commitment to the Sage community. When you work or live at a Sage community, you are making a commitment to be the best that you can be and have the community be the best that it can be. To anticipate residents' needs before they anticipate them. Demonstrate respect for residents, their families, and each other. And of course, that extends to each other in the community. And then exercising common sense. The people who know the work best are the people who do the work best, and they can apply their common sense to making sure we do the right thing all the time. So the articulation of the We Care values kind of pulled everyone at Sage together into pulled all those leaves together into more of a coherent whole. And that was the sort of the model then for what the culture was at Sage Senior Living. Now, one of the things that we learned very quickly, so you figure this was created and spread around and used as an organizing tool at Sage in the 2013-2014 timeframe. Okay, check. We've got our culture handled. We had, in very short order, an opportunity to rely on our values to direct what we do. So what you see here on the left is Towson, Maryland. This is the Sage community that Kelly bought back from Sunrise. This turned out to be one of the central areas where the riots occurred in the Baltimore area in 2015 after Freddie Gray's death. And Kelly and the team responded immediately from Philadelphia, but they've never dealt with anything like this before. They had riots happening right at their doorstep on York Avenue. So what do we do? And they relied, I wasn't there at the time, but the team went back to the values. Okay, So we got to work as a team. Everybody at Sage has to be focused on securing the community, securing our residents, but also securing our associates, many of whom had to travel back and forth through Riots to get to work. So immediately, Kelly went down, took up camp, and said to associates, anybody who needs to stay here, who needs to bring their family here, who needs us to pick you up, who needs us to bring transportation, we will bring you to the community because we are a team and we're going to work as a team. We fed our associates and their families who chose to stay at the community. We provided them with a safe environment. We anticipated what their needs were. If you go back to the values, which by the way are on the cards on your tables, you can see our mission and our values represented there. We exercised common sense. You know, what do? You bring in extra security. You do the things you need to do to make people safe and feel secure. Our respect for our residents, their family members, and each other really applied here. So it was just an example of how your values can anchor your culture every day in the good times, but also in the really challenging. And being consistent, demonstrating your values consistently through all scenarios can really help pull a team together and anchor who you are. So this is just a for instance of how our values stood the test for us. So that was 2015. We were getting ready to open Dalesford Crossing, brand new community. You know, as with any long-term initiative, you take kind of one step forward and 2 steps back. And we realized that we still needed to get to the next step of cultural embeddedness. So the first thing we did was hired someone from the hospitality industry. We brought someone from the golf country club industry to help us focus on our service model because, you know, exceptional service always doesn't just happen. And we didn't really understand exactly how to deliver the hospitality side of what we were selling. So we brought in someone from the hospitality business who, interestingly, stayed with us for a couple of years, went back to country clubs, and just rejoined us because he missed serving seniors and serving our communities so much. But that wasn't enough. We also needed to do something on the associate side. So what we did was look for an expert that we could bring in to help us shaping culture and build some real specific strategies to define, to spread, and embed our culture. And that enter Sue Misiorski from PHI. So Sue was the expert that we identified to bring in. And I think rather than me tell you about the work that Sue did, because I wasn't there yet, I'm going to ask Sue to come back up and tell about the work that she did.
Okay. So part of building relationships is giving people the tools and skills they need to be in successful relationships with one another. And so really that's what we did. We brought in leadership development training where, let me just say that step back for a second. In looking at how organizations are led, we find that oftentimes organizations lean one way or another between a culture of support and a culture of accountability. So organizations that lean towards a culture of accountability tend to have more consistent standards in place, but also a more punitive supervisory style. Organizations that lean more towards support tend to operate more from a highly individualized supervisory perspective, and there tends to be less consistency. What ends up happening is both don't go well. And you really need to have a leadership style in an organization that balances both support and accountability. So one of the things that I noticed as a consultant to Sage, as I went into their communities, is that they had some turnover at the executive director level. And one executive director may have been really heavy in the support side, and then a new executive director came in, and that one was really heavy on the accountability side, and it throws the employees, the associates, into a bit of a spin because they're kind of reeling between the culture that one leader set compared to the culture that a new leader sets, right? Does this make sense? You've probably seen this a lot in your own careers. So, when we have high turnover, when we have high employee vacancies, there are many organizations who go way overboard on support in order to make sure absolutely nobody else quits. Because gosh, if I hold you accountable, then for sure I'm going to have another opening that I will not be able to fill. And so what we brought in was a different kind of supervision called coaching supervision, and we teach people how to hold their employees accountable in a supportive way so that they're not mutually exclusive, so that it's both and. So that was one of the things that we did. Another thing that we did was to implement peer mentoring. So most of our employee turnover in long-term care is in people's first 90 days. And a lot of time that happens because they get thrown in, right? You just don't have enough staff on duty the day that they're starting, and so employees sort of get thrown in. So we implemented a peer mentor program that was an important part of the onboarding process, and it's a relationship-centered onboarding, so that each new employee is paired with a formally trained mentor whose job is to welcome you and support you relationally at a time when you are at your most vulnerable. I mean, what's more vulnerable really than being a new employee or a new resident, right? They both share that very vulnerable time period. So we have many stories about employees who went on their lunch break and never came back, and all kinds of things like that, and peer mentoring really stops all of that. We've seen peer mentoring when it is implemented with fidelity, which means that you don't just skip it the days that you don't have enough staff to do it. When it's implemented with fidelity, we see it improve retention by as much as 92%. So super important way of going about doing things. We also implemented appreciative inquiry, which is a part of the Sage Way culture, and it's a part of the philosophy of the coach supervisor, to see strengths first. Now that's what underpins person-centered care, is to see the residents' strengths. But when it comes to the workplace, so often we don't see an employee from a strengths-based perspective. And over and over and over again, employees would say to me, Sue, the only time my supervisor talks to me is if they think I did something wrong, right? That is not appreciative inquiry. So we want to be seeing people's strengths, pushing them through their learning edge, growing from their place of strength. And we're really treating the associates that way, in the same way that we're treating the elders. Everybody's learning, growing, and being valued and respected for the gifts and strengths that they have. I don't know where I put the clicker. Oh, it's okay.
So I already moved you to this slide.
Okay. So I would just also, I already talked about all of this, but just to say that this is definitely not for the faint of heart. It is hard as hell to change your culture. This is not easy work. This is not easy work. It takes persistence. It takes an intentional strategy. and it takes a real senior leadership team that is holding each other up, that are all rowing the boat in the same direction and all cheerleading in the same direction. And we're going to go into that in more detail.
And just on that note, we were not in a scenario where we were changing culture. We were in a scenario where we were continually, defining it as we grew the organization. And yet it's still as hard as changing culture because people carry culture with them. So it's not like something that's in the building and you step in and then, oh, good, I'm covered in culture. It's, every single person who comes in influences the culture. So it's how you get people living the Sage way. So whether you're changing from a place you don't want to be or trying to curate the place you do want to be, it's still really hard and continual. It's not something you just check a box. That's why it's not a revolution, it's an evolution, but it's the everyday work of leaders for sure. So Sue's, let me see, move this so it's not in the way. So Sue has come in, she's introduced the peer mentor program, the leadership training, the We Care communications training, all of which live to this day. The point that Sue made about fidelity makes all the difference does make all the difference. One of the things that Sue recommended in her work with Sage was that they bring in a dedicated HR person. So enter 2017. This is when I was hired, right here on the highest turnover of the decade. That's when I came in. We had, at that point, 4 communities that were branded Sage communities. We had acquired another community that we didn't build, we acquired in the Pennsylvania suburbs, and we also had 2 additional communities in the Baltimore area under management. So we were 6 communities, a 7th in construction, and another 4 on the drawing boards. So that's what I came into. So even with all the work we had already done around culture, turnover was really kicking our butts. We were at our trailing 12 months was at about 150%. So despite all the work we had done, we knew we still had more work to do because with this kind of turnover, it tells you something about engagement. We're just not getting the Sage way to stick with people and getting people to stay. So we needed to do, to continue advancing our culture work. Fortunately for me, about a month after I came in, we went through a rebranding exercise. And you kind of wonder, what does rebranding have to do with culture? But it turned out that it had a lot to do with culture. We had a 2-day offsite with residents, associates, leaders, from across the community, investors, community members, people who helped design, our design and build team, vendors of all sorts. So we had a large group of people come together and do a really deep dive on who is Sage and how we represent that to the community in a branding way. And through that work, we went from Sage Senior Living to SageLife, Living to the Power of You. That came out of that 2-day session after some follow-on work. So we dropped the senior because what we really wanted to say is we're selling lifestyle. We're selling kind of a way of aging, a choice about aging. We during that 2 days realized that our mission is just as much about our employees as it is about our residents and families. And we made the decision then and there that we were going to stop calling our employees and we were going to start calling them associates and treat them as associates as opposed to subordinates. In the course of that work, we changed our mission. So our mission used to be the best home for each resident every day. And you can see, if you have these We Care cards, you can see we changed our mission to say, to create the best home for each member of the SageLife family. So that includes associates, residents, family members, and such, by encouraging, empowering, and celebrating successful aging. So it was a very intentional and important part of our work to expand it to include our mission to our associates and to give that some focus. We also said, all right, we know we need to do more intentional culture work, but what do we want to focus on? So this is a work systems model developed by Dr. Gregory Shea out of the Wharton school, and it's attributed on the next slide. So if you're in your app and looking for the attribution, that's where it is. But his research determined that when you define who you are, when you define your culture, how you do what you do, if you're going to be able to sustain that culture, you've got to have intentional work in at least 4 of these 8 categories. So, organizationally, you have to be set up to drive to the kind of culture you're looking for. And for Sage, one small thing we did was to get very clear in the way we depicted our table of organization that the communities are at the top. The resident is at the top, frontline associates are serving them, and the corporate office where I work is just, in support of all the rest of that. Decision allocation, information distribution, measurement, rewards, people, task, workplace design. So those were the 8 areas. We opted to focus on some things that we thought were important to our culture specifically. So starting with information distribution. How do we communicate to our teams? How do we communicate our culture and reinforce our culture to our teams? How do we live what is one of our cultural imperatives, which is transparency? How do we ensure that we are communicating transparently with our teams? So that was one thing we focused on. Measurement was another. So how are we assessing people's performance? Are we incorporating the We Care values into how we assess performance? Are we rewarding people based on demonstration of the We Care values, or are we rewarding them on something else? So we changed our reward system to move away from just how we performed financially to how we performed against our We Care values and our SAGE promise. People was another big focus. Sue talked about having executive directors who had very different talents and areas of emphasis. We created a consistent model for what our executive directors needed to bring to the table, and then how they continued to set the table in their communities. And then we hired against that and evaluated against that. So those were a few of the things that we decided we really wanted to focus on through this culture change or culture establishment model. We also took a look at some employee engagement research that was conducted and published by PwC in 2015. And what PwC looked at from engagement research across multiple industries and across the country, organizations of all different sizes, was what are the drivers for active engagement and what are the detractors or the obstacles for active engagement. Since at the end of the day, we needed to get that 150% turnover down and make sure that our workforce was engaged. If you think back to earlier in the presentation, Sue talked about the 2-for-1 balance between people who are disengaged versus the people who are engaged. We really wanted to flip that around. So we took the findings from the PwC research about what drives engagement, leadership vision, and being able to articulate that you're working for a company that's thriving and there's always going to be a role for you to grow in an organization, being treated with respect and the perception of fairness. You may not like what happens to you, but if you believe it's fair, then you can interpret it differently. Area for growth, that I as an associate can grow. There's a place, this is a growing company, there's a place for me to grow. Being committed to quality. If our associates don't believe that what we're selling our residents every day is worth it, it's going to show up in how they perform and whether they stay. And then cooperation and collaboration. This is one that I love and I think about all the time. If you ask an associate in a survey, does your department work well with each other? They're going to say, yeah, we all work great together. How does your department work with other departments? Oh, those other departments don't support us at all. And that's a source of dissatisfaction. So how departments work across a community becomes a real source of engagement or disengagement for associates. And that starts at the leadership level. So if you have department heads in your communities that don't get along, this is where it shows up. And I can tell you that when you hear a manager saying, that department doesn't support my department, well, are you supporting your colleague? Is your colleague supporting you? That's been a real finding for us and something we drive toward a lot at Sage, is that cooperation and collaboration. Then on the detracting side, things that work against engagement, workload assignments. As Sue was saying, when you have people who, a lot of turnover, you have a lot of vacancy, you've got those tried and true people who are carrying all the load or doing all the work, or, it's always the strong performers that feel punished by the poor performers, right? So this was an area that we really wanted to focus on in how we distribute workload and assignments and tasks. Poor use of meetings. Fortunately, SageLife is not a heavy meeting culture, so that hasn't been a problem for us. But if you are a heavy meeting culture, make sure your associates are deriving value from those meetings. Lack of clarity. I get mixed signals. I don't get enough information to do my job. I get too much information from too many people, so I don't know what to focus on. But help me understand my role and responsibility if I don't know, if it's not clear. And then poor processes. You can't ask people to deliver exceptional service if the processes aren't designed to support that as well. So we looked at that work, attached to that some of the learnings from the work systems model, and really began to focus, all right, where do we want to spend some time on developing new tools and processes? So one of the first things we did was we took our We Care values and we developed what we called promises. And it really started with, all right, looking at the engagement literature, knowing that the people piece of the work systems model is really important and that how our leaders behave is critical to our success. We started by building Sage Leadership Promise, and that's articulated on the inside of these cards. So we said that if someone accepts a role to lead their fellow associates, first of all, they are going to lead by example. So you can't ask someone to practice the Sage way when their leader is doing something completely different. So we really drove that as a key leadership promise. The second is to be communicative, to tell people what they need, when they need to know it, and to be transparent. If we can't do something, tell people why we can't do what they think, or suggest we do. To be curious. We consider ourselves, when Sue said at the beginning, one word for your culture, ours is curious. We're always curious about what our residents want, what our associates want. They're curious, interested people in growing and developing. So curious, ask people what their opinions are. How could we do this better? What do they need? So leaders needing to be asking the questions and then being open to the feedback, focusing on developing others, of course, optimizing resources, right? And then collaborating across communities, as I talked about. We also wanted to give Sage associates some guidance on, all right, so what does it mean to work as a team? What does it mean to deliver exceptional service always? So we developed the Sage Associate Promise as a quid pro quo. Be welcoming, be helpful, kind of like the Boy Scout, Girl Scout credo, but being conscientious, accountable, open, and taking pride in myself and my environment. And the details are written in here. But the Sage Promise became another way for us both to select people, orient people, reward and measure people. So we've built reward systems where if someone catches somebody doing something well, whether it's a resident or family member or an associate, they can fill out a card and that person gets recognized at our daily huddle. So that was one of the first things we did. And I should mention that was developed by a team of executive directors, health and wellness directors, which is our nursing leadership, and dining directors, along with some associate feedback, because those are the people that are involved the most with our workforce. So it was HR-led, but not HR-derived. So I think that's another important thing, is involving the people that have to really make this happen in the communities. So then we wanted to reinforce our culture. So these are just some of the things that we did. I have to pay attention to time, so Sue has time for her stuff. Kelly Andrus, the president and founder, and I did roundtables and continue to do roundtables throughout all of our communities, asking people provocative questions like, why don't people stay? And really getting them to open up and learn a lot. We learn a lot from them about what's working and what's not working that can inform some of our work. We do daily huddles. So in every community at 10:15 at 3:15 and at 11:30. Whoever is available comes to a gathering to a common place and listens to, or we'll pick someone out to read a daily huddle message. And I'll just give you an example here. These come from the communities and reinforce our values and promises. So here's one that will be read on the 8th. In the early days of opening our new community, Echo Lake, the associates pulled together to make sure the service was as seamless as possible, even when the restaurant was not open yet. The associates worked as a team, coordinating catering and meal delivery to resident apartments and serving meals in their temporary restaurant near the lobby. The dining and life enrichment teams coordinated all of the details to make sure residents would still receive delicious meals and the opportunity to socialize over dinner with new neighbors. These teams practiced being helpful and anticipating needs to solve problems to ensure a positive experience despite some challenges. In the end, the residents were thrilled to be in the community and were so appreciative of the efforts of the associates in delivering exceptional service always. It is truly the people who make a community great. So these daily huddles serve to enforce a lot of things. One is communities get to submit huddle stories. So I'll get emails from all manner of people throughout the community saying, I have a great huddle story for you, or hey, a family member sent in this letter, can you publish it as a huddle story? So we're telling stories that happen in SAGE communities. So it's a way of saying, hey, culture is alive and well here. Here's how it's happening. We tell them from all of the communities. We name names where we can, where people are comfortable with that. So there's a little recognition in there. Oh, I got called out in the huddle message today. Staff, really our associates love that. And we love that way of honoring and rewarding them. But it also says, this culture is not hard to do. You're doing this all the time. Recognize that you're doing it. We're recognizing that you're doing it. And the fact that we've got all SAGE communities every day, same time, having the same message delivered has really been fantastic for us. It's a lot of coordinating work behind the scenes, and there are days when I'll say, I can't believe I have to do more huddle messages, but boy, the payoff is tremendous. And then it also gives people a chance to say, we've got 3 tours today, how can we delight these tours, or it's Mrs. Jones's 100th birthday today, here's who's coming in to celebrate, things like that. So it's a good way of communicating across the group. So I love the huddles and just can't underscore that enough. The leadership training we've talked about. We've also expanded on leadership training to do some work in some specific areas around accountability, coaching, emotional intelligence, things that our leaders have said, hey, I could use some boosters on this. So we've done work there. We've gone through our job descriptions, our evaluations, our handbook, our postings to articulate what's important in terms of measurement as in our cultural work. We talked about peer mentors. We've started doing formal pulse surveys. We do an annual survey now. I'm proud to say that we were recognized as a great place to work in the 2018-19 year. So we're hoping we'll stay there for the next few years. We introduced 9-box talent management, and I do want to tell a quick story about this. So many of you have probably done 9-box work where you have leaders take their team members and determine where they are on a performance and potential grid. So we did that with all of our leaders so we could understand where we needed to develop and develop some people and stretch others. Then we took it to the next level, and we had our health and wellness directors do this work with their teams. And it was a real eye-opening exercise for one health and wellness director in particular who realized that among her LPNs, med techs, and resident assistants, many of them clustered in the upper right-hand corner, which means high performers and high potential. And that's an interesting kind of problem to have because you're no longer then thinking, okay, I need to move people out of the organization. You're thinking, how do I keep them here? And how do I continue to develop them, which is one of our SAGE promises? How do I keep them interested in their work? So where she had just been focusing on managing performance, now her leadership focus became, how do I manage growth? How do I manage stimulating and keeping these people engaged so they don't move to other places and to other communities? We started behavior-based interviewing. Sue talked about that a little bit. You've got to find out whether past performance really will, how it will inform future performance. And then daily pay, which is, any of you familiar with daily pay? It's a system that lies on top of the payroll system that enables people to be paid for earned but unpaid net wages mid-pay period. It's been huge for us, a big satisfier. And people will stay because they know they can access their pay when they earned it. It's also a great way to get people to work overtime. You work overtime today, you can get paid for it tomorrow. So just a little plug for daily pay. So those are some of the things we did, but our work continues. And there's still a lot of other things we need to do. So I will tell you some of the outcomes and takeaways is our turnover, I'm still not happy about it, but we're down just at about 70%. So it's a big improvement from 2017. The people involved in the work from the outside want to join our team. So we were able to recruit Sue from PHI because she loves our culture. She loves who we are. We have a common vocabulary now, so people talk in the language of our values and our promises. We talked about the huddle stories coming from the communities, reinforcing mechanism. And then we just have to persevere, and we have to keep introducing new and different things. We just brought in a new HR system that will allow us to do real-time communication with people and help with all sorts of new processes to improve their work. But, you know, we said at SageLife, we go where the residents lead us, and this is a big part of the Sage way. You know, with culture, we go where the associates lead us. They carry the culture with us, so what we need to do is just keep curating the path so the culture moves the way that we want it to, because we all carry it with us. So that's the Sage story to present. There's a lot more work to do and a long road ahead, but that's where we are. We feel pretty good about bringing our initial 200 leaves into some kind of a meaningful plant, and that plant has now grown. If I were here next year, I would tell you we've gone from 7 communities under management to 11, and then it will probably be 15 the year after that. So that's our growth trajectory to date. So Sue will bring us home with evolution or revolution. I think you know the answer to that question.
Thank you. So when we started, people had a wide range of responses to the first word that comes to your mind to how you would describe your culture today. So for those of you who were able to easily pick a very positive word, you're probably more in the mode of wanting to sustain and nurture the beauty that you have in place already. And for those of you who picked words that were less positive, you may be more in a situation where you're really wanting to change your culture. And so you've got to grapple with speed and pace, right? Am I going to engage our team in a process that's evolutionary, building on what we already have, or am I going to go full tilt and do something that's a little bit more revolutionary that I know will cause more chaos in the short run, but perhaps get us farther along in a shorter amount of time? There's no right or wrong answer to that question. It's you knowing your team, where you are in your organization, what you think people can tolerate, and what fits with the style best within your particular organization. But there are some commonalities regardless of whether you're evolving or you're really trying to do something in a more rapid way. So first of all, I cannot emphasize enough that you've got to have the right senior leader in your organization, senior leaders. I have had many organizations that hired me as a consultant, and their people who hired me were very eager and interested in changing their culture. But the people they reported to were not so interested. You can only get so far if that's the case. It's something that that impacts every layer and every system in your organization, and you've really got to all be on the same page. If you're an organization that has a corporate office, your corporate office needs to be supporting this in the same way that the local leadership team is supporting it in your organization. And I will say that that is absolutely one of the reasons why I was so attracted to SageLife, is because the president of our company, Kelly Andress, absolutely walks this every moment of every day. So leadership matters a lot. And if you're in a situation where you feel like your culture is such that really it's not a fun place to be, it's just not. It calls upon us to have a little bit of humility, to be vulnerable, and to just ask, talk to the staff, talk to the residents, and be totally open to their responses. Not get defensive, but to just genuinely listen and genuinely take it in. You will hear when you do that, you will get positive feedback, you'll get sort of middle of the road feedback, and you'll get negative feedback. It's all true. You have to take it all in, and you have to tease through it and help pick your priorities. Don't ask if you're not going to use the information. So if you're having these sessions where you're asking your residents, the families, and the employees, what matters most to you? That's really the be-all, end-all question, is what matters most? So if you're asking and they're telling you, and then you just say, well, we can't do that, they're not going to talk anymore. It shuts people down, right? And I have to say that in my experience, most people are asking for things that are within our control to implement. Very rarely do I run across people who are asking for things that are so far-fetched that they're just not within the realm of actual possibility. And the other thing I think that's really important is to take a look at how are you doing? How are you feeling? Are you exhausted? Have you lost hope? Do you feel like the system is so broken that it's hopeless and you can't make a difference? Because if you've come to that place as a leader, your organization feels that, they pick up on that energy from you, and it just sort of saps everything. And to be able to engage in this kind of change takes a lot of energy. So I always tell people, do what you need to do to take care of yourself, because you've got to be able to be inspiring. Whoops. So, in working with your leadership team, do you have the right team? Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. It matters, right? So I always advise people to meet with your senior leaders individually and have a really open, transparent, honest conversation with each other on a scale of 1 to 10. When you hear me talk about the goals for our culture initiative, how do you rate yourself between a 1 and a 10? With 1, I hate it, and 10, I love it. How do you rate yourself? And why did you pick that number? Okay, I'm taking that in. Suppose you told me your answer is a 4. I give it a 4. Does that mean that you're the wrong person for the job? Not necessarily. What's my next question? What do you need from me to get from a 4 to a 10? What do you need so that you can be successful in your role? If you provide all of that and the person is still a 4, now you're in a different situation. Now you have to decide if you have a leader that's actually damaging to your culture instead of helping you grow it, okay? I find that most people can grow and be very successful when they have the right supports in place. Most people can. I also find that keeping the wrong person can set you back years. Years. It's amazing to me the impact that one very influential person who is simply a misfit in your organization can have. Okay. So let's tease out the resistance, right? If you're in a workplace where people are feeling a lot of tension, it feels chaotic, everybody's quitting, people are like, oh my God, I looked at the schedule today and there's only 2 people on, how am I going to get through this shift? You know, if that's the environment you're in, then you know you're going to be hitting a lot of resistance. And this is a great time to build on what Meg said, which is to be curious. Be curious. What's it about? So tease out your resistance. So if somebody says to you, we already tried that, it didn't work, how would we respond?
That was then, this is now.
That was then, this is now. Okay. Now, I would say what I hear in that is, here's a new opportunity and a new day, right? The employee might not feel heard if that's the response. So instead, what I would probably say to the employee is, oh, you have some experience with this. Tell me more. Tell me more about your experience and how it went. Was there anything about it that worked well? Usually there was, right? So it's just a matter of being curious and teasing it out. Level 1 resistance, all they need is more information. They're feeling resistant because they don't get it. They don't understand why you're trying to do this. What's wrong with 7 to 3, 3 to 11, and 11 to 7? Why do we have to change our shifts? Right? So they just don't get it. So that kind of resistance, people need more information. Level 2 resistance is a little bit harder. This is when people get it, but they don't like it. Okay? I get that you want us to have consistent assignment. I totally understand intellectually why you think it's better, and I don't like it. So what's our response with level 2 resistance? Just get curious. Tell me more, right? Tell me more. So I'm curious, what is it that you don't like about it? Well, I don't want to have this person every day because I'm afraid that I'm going to get hit on a daily basis and this resident hits. Okay? That's a real challenge that speaks to a much bigger issue, right? We don't have the right care plan in place with that individual yet. We haven't gotten to true person-centered care. So level 3 is even harder, and that is, I don't like you. I don't want to do that because I don't like you. Now, it could be that you are the director of nursing and this person had a very negative experience with the director of nursing before you, and now they're holding it against you because you have the same job. It could be that 10 years ago, this person was a no-call, no-show, and you wrote them up. And in the same week, they believe they had a peer who was a no-call, no-show that you did not write up. And therefore, they think that you treated them differently. And they've held it against you for the past 10 years, right? I mean, this is all the kind of stuff that goes on in a human environment. But we have to tease it out. We have to figure out what's going on. And a lot of it is literally just being curious and being genuinely open to people's responses, and then dealing with whatever the truth is that becomes in front of you. Once you're going through this process, you want your team, just like Sage did, to re-look at what are your values and articulate them. What is the mission? Is our mission still true and right for us today, or does it need an evolution? And to really articulate those guidepost foundational statements in a way that everybody can be proud of them and feel like they're really owning them. And then lastly, obviously, we want to offer a lot of praise. I'm really big on forgiveness. I talk openly in workplaces about forgiveness because I find that long-term care can be a very unforgiving place. People's memories go back years, and sometimes the thing that's being held against you, you don't even remember that you did. So I think forgiveness is huge, and as long as we can practice forgiveness, a lot of good can come in eradicating tensions and people undermining each other in the workplace. So what we want to do in our last bit of time together is to hear from you. So we would love for you to sit at tables with people that you don't work with every day, and we'd like for you to share things that you have implemented in your organizations to advance your culture, things that are serving you well that would be good ideas for other people in this room to hear. Can I have a time check? Okay. So it'll take 10 minutes to have that conversation at your tables, and then we're going to have you do some sharing back so people can hear your great ideas, okay? And really, this is much better if you don't sit with the people you came with, because y'all already know what you're doing. So 10 minutes. So I know with certainty that being at a Pioneer Network conference, there are many excellent ideas in the room of things that you all have implemented already that would be wonderful to share with your colleagues here in the room. So if you're willing to share some of what you discussed at your table, raise your hand. I'm going to walk over with the microphone. Okay, here I come. If you could introduce yourself and where you're from, that'd be fabulous.
I'm Susan Howard. I'm from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I'm new to healthcare, and I'm director of HR for a small Mennonite continuing care facility. So the four things that I heard from our table, we have some competitive groups that are working together. We have a list of managers who've lost their engagement because their jobs are going away. We've tried neighborhood concept. It didn't work. We want to try it again. So there's some fear. And some of our folks feel disposable because they're part of the corporate process. So right now we're just really here to learn.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm having sort of a visceral, didn't you just feel that in your belly? I kind of want to just give you all a big hug. And thank you for sharing your reality, which is obviously not an easy reality right now. So thank you. Thank you for that. Others, things that you have in place. Yes, Donna.
Hi, my name is Donna Moore. I'm with Park Springs in Stone Mountain, Georgia, which is a suburb of Atlanta. And our community has been in place 15 years, and I've been there just a little over a year. And one of the things that we've done at Park Springs is part of our operational plan is that everyone grows. And our metric for that is that 90% of our employees will have a developmental plan. And it is an opportunity for them to figure out, what do I need to grow? What do I need to develop myself, my skills? And it's a way to keep employees engaged. And it can be as simple as coming to this conference, and we brought 13 people to this conference. It can be something as small as I'm going to develop my skills in person-centered care by reading a book or starting a book club. So it doesn't matter the level, it's just that everyone grows.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I think, you know, one of the things that stands out for me in that example, again, is the parallel between how we treat our employees and how we treat the residents. And there really should be no difference. It should be a seamless continuum, and just as the residents are growing and doing new things and learning and achieving new life goals, so do we need to support the employee and associates in that same way as well. That's awesome. Thank you. Other examples from the room of things that you're doing to grow your culture? We're out there. Okay, thank you.
We're actually going through a culture change journey this year, and I was just saying the thing that I think is making the biggest difference in our community is that we had our 2-day appreciative inquiry in June, and we now have what we're calling the SMILE Committee, which is a support advisory team. They're called SMILE because I'm from Simpson Meadows, so SM is capitalized, and then it's, you know, they came up with the title. So it's made up of residents, families, staff, and vendors, and they are leading the charge for what's coming next, not me, so.
Thank you. Thank you. Others? Okay, I'm coming to you.
Hi, I'm Peggy Brenner, and my colleague Ying is with me, and we just wanted to mention that we're very fortunate. We're from ACTS Retirement Life Communities, and we have 27 CCRCs in 9 states, I believe now, but we wanted to afford everyone the opportunity to receive leadership and management training. So we have what we call, it is ACTS Corporate University, that provides various educational sessions throughout the entire year. And back in 2006, we started a leadership academy through our ACTS Corporate University. And it was so successful, we then started also offering an advanced leadership academy. And it's a means of succession planning, or just letting the staff members know, you're invited. You know, come and learn how to be a manager or a leader. And we've had positive feedback because staff members have said to us, oh, you really care about us, you know, to invite us to these classes and learn, and they greatly have appreciated it. So our classes are always full. We offer them two days a week, full days for 8 weeks, and then we start another session after that.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Awesome. I saw another hand up, but okay, here we go. And congratulations, you got an award this morning, didn't you? Yeah, it's exciting.
I work at a assisted living community for people living with dementia, and we've been really looking at, I guess, more on a personal level, looking at staff and what makes them tick, and understanding cultural differences. And one thing that one tradition that we have is, just recently we had our 3rd annual Ethiopian coffee ceremony. So the majority of our staff are from Ethiopia, and you would think that asking them to do more work, more planning, more cooking, more dressing up, would be seen as a bad thing, but they gave in such abundant ways, and honoring and letting them express who they are has been the best staff appreciation thing we've ever done. Just understanding where they're coming from, what their values are, giving them that voice and that opportunity, that they're not just, you know, caregiver to, but they really matter and their history matters. So that's been awesome.
Beautiful example. Thank you so much. That's fabulous. Anybody else? Yes.
We had a great discussion here at our table and enjoyed sharing. I'm John from Cypress Point by AmeriCare, and we had a lot of similarities with what you're doing. Our company has developed this culture, and they've used the acronym FAMILY, FAMILY. First impressions go a long way. Address people by name, make visitors feel welcome. Individuals deserve respect. L is leave with graciousness, and Y is yes, find a way to be positive. And they're made on little key cards so that you can reinforce those. So just real quickly, we said at the same time, what word do you think of? And we both said family, even though we're at different communities. Our company took that, and we also asked every employee by survey, what 3 words do you think of? And then they took those words, and we created a motto. Just very quickly, I'll read that. And it just says, we make a difference in the everyday lives of others, and we are proud of the work we do. We embrace our team members like family. We have a culture of recognition, empowerment, and a side of fun. Our senior living communities are places where excellence thrives and that we call home. Join us. Thanks. We got a lot of work to do, but we're on the right path. Thanks.
You are on the right path. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Okay. So I'm gonna stop us here. Oh, 5 minutes. Okay. Does anybody have a question? Oh, did you want to share a story? Okay. I'm gonna get this one last story. Hi, Clyde. Okay. Sorry.
Anna really wanted me to talk. I just wanted to share one thing that we were doing at our place of employment, Hebrew Rehab Center in Massachusetts, is we started doing a new type of evaluation called a GPS, and we meet quarterly with all our employees to make sure that we address each topic on a regular basis instead of just coming in for your annual eval, and then it's too late. So we have different topics for it, so you can do professional growth, like we've talked about, or teamwork, or your culture, what you've been working on as a group, so that you can keep addressing those things and help them grow each time. And it's been great. We've just been doing it for this year, and I've really show a benefit from it. Checking in.
So is it GPS like the compass of where you're going? I love that.
It's very open, and you can fill in goals together.
Okay.
Yeah, each session, look at how you're doing with them, and then add new ones, and just keep making sure I help them with their goals.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love that. I will say that many associates tell us that they don't really find the evaluation process to be meaningful. And so you have taken an intentional approach to making it a very meaningful process. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Any last questions before we wrap up? Questions? Okay, I'm going to turn to Meg for that. John's question is, what is the SAGE evaluation process like? I don't know yet.
So I would not say that is one of our finest strategies yet, but it's one we're working on. We just implemented Ceridian Dayforce, which has a very robust performance management module that will allow us to be more iterative in our, kind of back to the comment in the back of the room where there are these quarterly meetings, more iterative. So right now, our commitment to our associates is that they will have at least an annual review that will include a discussion of their performance against the values, the We Care values, and the SAGE promises, as well as their specific job description, but then a very focused discussion on what their goals are and what SAGE's goals are for their growth and development over the coming year. So so I value, our email addresses are at the end of the presentation. If anyone's doing anything that you feel really good about, performance evaluation-wise, I'd love to get that feedback so that we can learn from you as well. Thank you.